Hello, Stephanie, Samantha, Melissa, Susanna, Amanda, Sarah Lee, Kathy, Stella, Carlene, Christine, and Tricia. Week 2 is complete. The course is 1/3 done. Welcome to week 3. There's a few things I'd like to lift up from our discussion last week. Susanna, Stephanie, and Kathy talked about how it is important to recognize the importance of all stakeholders and the importance of treating people fairly and equally. And that's always the place where we start. However, there are times where there will be conflicts between the interests of one group of stakeholders and another group of stakeholders. For example, the case where the employees would like a raise because they feel that their wages are not that great. They would really benefit from a raise. And the stockholders, the shareholders, feel like they want their dividends to get bigger so that they'll have more income. The same dollar can't go to two different places. I suppose you could compromise and split the difference down the middle, but then somebody's interests are still not completely satisfied. And this, as Kathy pointed out, this is not a hypothetical situation. In fact, this week you'll be reading about a court case that decided that the obligation of the leaders of the company was to serve the shareholders. It was Dodge versus Ford Motor Company. Henry Ford, the founder and CEO of the Ford Motor Company, wanted to increase his employees' wages, and he wanted to decrease the price of the cars so that more people could afford them. He thought having employees that were making more money and were more prosperous and getting cars out into the hands of more people would both be good things for society. They would both be social goods, and Ford wanted to promote that, even if it meant that his shareholders would get smaller dividends. And the court said, no, Henry, you can't do that. You have to be in the business of making profits for your shareholders. That's your job as a corporation. Later, in 1968, the Supreme Court held a different opinion. Similar situation where the Wrigley's, who owned Wrigley Field, the home stadium of the Chicago Cubs, did not install lights in the stadium because people in the neighborhood didn't want lights. They didn't want there to be night games. They thought that there would be a lot more traffic and perhaps more crime, so they didn't want that. And the Wrigley's respected that. They thought that it was good to serve the neighborhood, the people in the neighborhood, so they didn't install lights. The shareholders said, look, all the other major league teams have lights. They're all having night games. We are missing on increased revenue. The Wrigley's should be forced to put lights in the stadium, even though the neighborhood doesn't like it. And the Supreme Court there decided that the owners, the leaders of the company, could, in fact, decide that they wanted to respect the wishes of the people in the neighborhood and not put lights in the stadium, even if that meant less profits, that it was okay for corporate leaders to use their position as corporate leaders to promote social good, even if that reduced profit for the shareholders and income for the shareholders. And that's kind of where we are now. And there are many corporations that are guided by what's called the triple bottom line. It's profits. You have to make money if you're going to stay in business, if you're going to have a business. So that's still profit. The monetary bottom line is still very important. Profits, people. So you care for your employees, your customers, the people that live in the area around where your business operates, and place. You care about the environment, because how we treat the environment does affect the success of a corporation in the long run, in the very long run. Maybe it's profitable in terms of money to pollute in the short run, but in the long run, damaging the environment ends up hurting everybody. So that's something to think about. Christine and Melissa both pointed out that ethics training is important. Melissa put it this way: I believe an organization's most important ethical obligation to dealing with employees, customers, suppliers, investors, funders, and other stakeholders involves addressing, educating, and informing expectations of ethical behaviors. And as I said, Christine also put a big emphasis on ethics training and how important it is to protect people and keep them safe. So it's true. I agree 100% that ethics training is vital. We need to know what the rules are. We need to know what the principles that guide the organization are if we're going to follow them. That's the first step. It's kind of obvious. Unfortunately, a lot of the way that ethics training is done these days is not terribly effective. That people need a little bit more than just an online course and various little ethical scenarios. They need more than that. They need conversation. They need real life situations in which they could learn to apply the principles and the rules that they're being taught. And even more importantly, they need good ethical leaders at the top of the organization, because you can have all the ethics training that you could want to offer, but if the people at the top are not exercising good ethics, are not living ethically, it all falls apart. Perhaps the most noteworthy example of that is the Enron Corporation. Enron had excellent ethics training. Everybody had to do the ethics training, and yet it did not prevent terrible ethical and legal lapses because Ken Lay and other people in leadership were willing to commit fraud and other crimes in order to make more money for themselves. And so without ethical leadership, without an ethical culture, the ethics training isn't going to do a whole lot of good. Carlene pointed out that it's helpful to look at situations through, she called them 4 rules, four different ethical lenses or moral lenses to look at different situations. So she talked about, well, take a look at the situation from the utilitarian perspective. How, try to do the most benefit for the most people. That's generally a helpful thing to look at. What action is going to benefit the most people the most? But she said you should also look at it through the lens of moral rights. That something might seem like, wow, this will really benefit a lot of people, but it's going to hurt some people. It's going to damage their health. It's going to risk their safety. So, well, we can't do that then, because there are certain principles that we don't violate, even if it's going to make us more money and make people happy, make a lot of people happy. Then she said that you look at it from the perspective of justice. Of course, you have to do what's legal, but also taking into consideration what's fair. And then how is it applicable? How does the person who's making the decision or the group that's making the decision apply it and then communicate to everyone the reasons for the decision and how it was made? I think that's a helpful framework to look at ethical situations or ethical dilemmas through a variety of lenses. Can be very helpful because different lenses reveal different interests, reveal different problems, and will help us to make the decision that really is the best decision in that particular case. Kathy talked about the importance of trust, and you'll see behind me on the board there a book, The Speed of Trust by Stephen M.R. Covey. That's the son of the Covey that wrote The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People and several other famous books. So this is his son, and he argues that trust is the most valuable thing in a business. That if you can establish how quickly and how deeply you establish trust with your employees, your suppliers, your customers, that is the primary determinant of your success. And I think he has a point to that, because in order for things to get done, your employees need to trust the leadership. In order for customers to buy your product or your service, they need to trust that you're going to provide something of value. In order for investors to invest in your company or for people to loan you money, they need to trust that you're going to do well with it and pay back the loans and produce a dividend on the investment. So trust is a very core concept and vital to the success of any organization. That's what I have for this week. If you have any questions or would like to talk about anything, or if there's any way that I could be helpful to you, please reach out to me. Thanks.